exactly do the Colorado Buffaloes do well thus far in the 2025 college football season? Did they make the right decision based on reportedly who is expected to start at quarterback moving forward against Wyoming and beyond? And how important is team identity in sports? Plus, we will have a special guest, friend of the show, Will Peterson, who was live from Avalanche Media today at Avalanche Media Day today at Ball Arena, and will join us to catch up on the latest for the Burgundy and Blue as their season gets ready to ramp up right around the corner. All things to come on today's rundown, but we will begin, as always, with a special shout out to our friends at Denver Regenerative Medicine. Guys, if weight loss has been a struggle, it is time for something real. At Denver Regenerative Medicine, they use full-strength GLP-1 medications with doctor oversight. You can start today with a free consultation and get real results for under $300 a month. Book now at denverregen.com. The Colorado Buffaloes suffered a frustrating, embarrassing, and potentially season-altering loss against the Houston Cougars last week. And we kind of entered a situation where we left that game on Friday with more questions than we had prior to it once the Delaware game had finished. And one of those questions was, who's going to start at quarterback for the Buffaloes? And we are now getting reports from CBS Sports that the plan for Coach Prime and Pat Shurmur is to turn back to the quarterback who they named the starter at the beginning of the 2025 college football season in former Liberty Flame, Payton Salter. And yesterday, I think I kind of waxed poetic a little bit about the different forks in the road that the Buffaloes are facing at this critical juncture that I believe they are at in their season. They could continue forward with Ryan Staub. They could turn the ball back to Julian Lewis and maybe embrace a rebuild and build for the future, acknowledging that you're going to concede some wins. Or they could go all the way back to Payton Salter, who they moved away from on two separate occasions in the first 2 weeks of the college football season. The only wrong answer, in my opinion, to that question that I posed yesterday at the fork in the road with three prongs that the Buffaloes could take at this critical juncture in their season, was to do what reportedly they plan to do, in my opinion. And that is to turn the reins back over to Payton Salter. What does Payton Salter provide you that makes you feel good about moving forward the rest of this college football season? He has no more eligibility left after this year. So there is no building for the future with that path, the way there certainly would be with Juju, and I guess there would be to a lesser degree with Ryan Staub. Pat Shurmur's offense, as we saw during the Georgia Tech game, and I don't think that that can just be thrown away because of a limited sample size against Delaware, Pat Shurmur's offense was not set up in the last true showing we got with Payton Salter to maximize the skill set that he possesses as a quarterback. It did not utilize and center around his mobility within the pocket, his ability to get out of the pocket and use his legs as a weapon in the run game. He also, in moments where that could have manifested, was too timid or nervous or whatever in situations to do that. So you're not building for the future. You don't have an offensive coordinator that has proven or at least shown that he is going to maximize the skill set of Payton Salter. And you say you're not punting on a season, I guess, by going with the player you started before. But because of those other two previous factors, the ceiling for what you can get with Payton Salter on this Buffaloes team in 2025 is significantly lower than maybe we thought it would be preseason. That was the only wrong answer to the question, in my opinion, because you could have kept going with Ryan Staub and said, hey, we ran through the turnstile at quarterback. Everybody got a taste. We feel more confident with what Ryan Staub can do because he has maybe superior arm talent to a Payton Salter, despite the fact that Caden's better with his legs. And he's more ready for the moment, or showed to be more ready for the moment, than Julian Lewis was in his very small sample size. That was maybe the less wrong answer than turning it to Payton Salter, but the right answer was ultimately to probably just concede that this season was not going to go the way that you thought it would, and you take the lumps with Julian Lewis, you put Juju in, and you build for 2026 and beyond, because that's probably the only thing that they could sell to players who are going to transfer out of CU at the end of this season if things go off the rails, and players they might want to try to bring in the transfer portal or in the recruiting process after this season concludes, is that, hey, we took our medicine with Julian Lewis because this 5-star recruit is going to be the future of this program, and you can get in on the ground floor here because this elevator is going to rise in a hurry. But they didn't do that. And now we will see if the reports from CBS Sports and others are accurate, and that Payton Salter will indeed be the starting quarterback against Wyoming, which will leave the question open again as to whether or not they will make another change, and that this revolving door quarterback is going to spin for at least another couple of weeks. Part of the reason why I think the Buffs have, in this year with Coach Prime, year 3 with Coach Prime, such an issue determining who to play at quarterback doesn't have as much to do with the particular skill sets, the talent, or maybe even necessarily the nuances of the offensive coordinator position. The problem is they don't have an identity as a program. They don't have a clear-cut understanding from the head coach to the coordinators to the players, permeating throughout the building, that they can all look back to and say, this is what we do well. And that's a huge problem. Unless you ask Coach Prime, who, when asked about the Buffs' identity yesterday at his weekly press conference, said, first of all, I don't know coaches that seek identity. I think coaches seek wins. You could call it what you want. It looks like the way it looks, and I don't care what kind of car we pull up in, as long as we pull out of here with a W, I'm good. He went on to say, so I don't really get into the identity thing, not whatsoever. What does that mean? What does your identity even mean? I don't even know what it means. And then goes on to reference the Ohio State won the national championship, right? What did they hang their hat on? Well, if nobody else at that press conference was willing to answer it, I'll be happy to, Coach Prime. Ohio State, in the year they won a national championship in dominant fashion throughout the course of a college football season, they hung their hat on two things. As the poster child for Big Ten football, they played fantastic defense. They allowed the fewest points per game in the country at 12.9. They were excellent defensively on fourth down. They ran the hell out of the football to set up their passing game with the talent that they had at the wide receiver position. And that's how you get 2 running backs in this last draft, drafted inside the top 40 in Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. So that's what they hang their hat on, because they have an identity that backs that up. And every coach and every player and every recruit that gets talked to along the trail knows what that identity is. And that's the face of the program. The Buffaloes, unfortunately, don't have one. And based on the words of their head coach, it doesn't sound like there's any positive momentum toward developing one anytime soon. And that's a shame, because if anyone should know the importance of team identity in sports, especially at the professional level, but this would apply in college, high school, and peewee sports, however far you want to go down, it's a guy like Deion Sanders, who played on some legendary Dallas Cowboys teams, who played on some seriously talented 49er teams, teams that were coached by legendary figures in the NFL world, who knew exactly what they wanted to do and how they wanted to go about it. And it permeated throughout the entire organization, from locker room to front office. And apparently that's not necessary in Boulder. And the result is what we've now seen, where you have a losing record. You haven't even really gotten into the meat of your Big 12 slate yet. And we're hoping that a win against a team like Wyoming can keep things above water and prevent things from really going off the rails while the revolving door quarterback continues to spin. That is all I think I'm going to say on the Colorado Buffaloes today, because I think there are much more happy and bright things to maybe project forward to, with another team we have here in town being the Colorado Avalanche, who held their annual media day today as their season comes closer and closer. We had boots on the ground, as we always do in moments like this here at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan, with our own Will Peterson, who joins us now. Will, how are you doing today? And what was one of your bigger takeaways to kind of get things going, the vibe around Ball Arena on Avs Media Day?
Yeah, Richie, I'm doing well. And what was interesting was I asked Jared Bednar about kind of the sense of urgency to get it done this year. You know, I framed the question of, in some senses, that parade feels like yesterday, and others, the 22 parade feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed and goes, "Oh, it feels like a lifetime ago." So I think they know that, like, they got to get back to the mountaintop. And that's obviously easier said than done. There's 32 teams in the league at this point. And not that all 32 have a chance to win the cup, but there's 10 to 12 teams that are battling for one trophy. The Avs are one of those 10 to 12 teams. So I love the urgency from Bednar. I like Nathan McKinnon saying it's going to be tough if we only get one cup with this core. I thought that was really interesting, an admission that, you know, all the greats in sports, universally across all of them, almost every single one has at least 2 rings, right? It seems like that is what separates kind of the good from the great, if you will. They don't want to be a one-off champion. Kel McCarr talked about, yes, that is our goal, and we think we can get it done to get another second Stanley Cup. And I think they're excited that this is the first year without these big question marks, Richie, right? There's no Gabe Landeskog hanging over them. I'm sure we'll get more into him. There's no Valerian Nichushkin hanging over them. Like, this team that they constructed, it's going to be the team, and they're either going to be good enough or not good enough, but it's not going to be musical chairs and big questions about leaders like we've seen the last couple of years.
It is an interesting kind of psyche or thought process that I think these organizations go through in any league, not just specific to the NHL, but, you know, you talk about it feeling like a lifetime away. It was a handful of years ago. There's a part of me that probably thinks that a lot of the players in that organization and coaches in that organization thought it felt like a lifetime ago going into the next season after they won it, because so much changes, so much turns over. You've had this long march and it's finally over. And then it just kind of, at this point, we're several lifetimes apart in some ways from that. And if they're going to get back to the mountaintop that you referenced, it's going to be, I think, as was evidenced by what we saw in the single postseason series last year, in large part because of the question mark that is no longer there around their captain in Gabe Landeskog, who, despite not playing hockey for 3 years, at times during that series against the Stars, looked like the best player on the ice. That is something that I couldn't have foretold. It was not something that I expected or thought that the Avalanche could count on. And it didn't ultimately win them the series, but it certainly helped make things a little bit tighter than it could have been given the dynamic. Take a listen, as you did, but for our audience, take a listen to what Jared Bednar said about Gabe Landeskog's health going into this season and his projections for 2025.
Well, he's feeling great, so he'll be full go, and I think we just have to monitor that and make our decisions like in the moment. You know, like if he has any soreness or anything's going on with him and he needs a day here and there off for practice or even games, and we'll do that. Like, we're looking at big picture stuff here for Landy, get him through the full entire season, have him feeling good so he's available come the stretch run and hopefully playoffs.
Will, with the warm and fuzzies of last year's comeback and finally seeing that story arc come to a climax with Gabe Landeskog, where he comes back for a couple of games with the Eagles, starts in the postseason for that first series, and then was unfortunately abruptly ended by the Dallas Stars. With all of that worn off, where are you at strategically with the concept of legitimate load management for a player like Gabe Landeskog, with what he means to this Avalanche team, what his role is, and the fact that that's not typically something that I feel like happens in hockey the way that it does in the NBA and some other sports professionally?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was fascinating to hear Jared say that, because they're not going to use kid gloves on Gabriel Landeskog. Like, the vibe I got today is They want him to play 75 to 80 games, and they think he can handle that type of workload. You heard it there in the answer. Hey, if he comes in at the end of a long road trip and says, I need a night, Jared's going to give him a night. That's not going to be the end of the world. But they're not coming into this going, ooh, if we get 50 games out of him, we'll be thrilled. They're expecting their captain to be out there almost every single night. We'll see how he holds up. But quite frankly, Richie, I don't think he would have gotten the surgery he finally did, because remember, he had multiple different procedures, unless he thought this could get him another 2-3 years of NHL hockey. I'm not predicting Gabe Landeskog is going to play 7 more seasons, but I do think it's really interesting, considering how much we talked about should he retire, all this and that the Avalanche are looking at this like, yeah, he missed 3 years, but he can come out and play every night, be a leader, be a contributor, and those are our expectations. That was maybe the most encouraging thing of the entire day, is that they're just treating this like they were post-injury. Gabe's here. He's playing. He's our captain. He's good to go. Now, we're knocking on all the wood that he's going to hold up, but that's certainly the Avalanche's expectation. And for it being, September 17th, that was really encouraging for me to hear, and I'm sure Avs fans to hear as well.
Another source of encouragement or optimism, it sounded like, from the captain himself, centered around the depth that they feel like they have beyond their first line in Colorado. Gabe Landeskog spoke about that depth and maybe the difference in feeling going into this year than it was post-trade deadline last year. So take a listen.
Well, I mean, I think you look at the change in the roster from training camp last year to the end of the year. Obviously, like Nate said, it's significant. And you need a lot of things to fall into place. You need just things to bounce your way, I guess, to a certain extent. At the same time, I think the big difference is that we're sitting here now with a deep lineup. And you look at our top 6, and you look at our bottom 6, and you look at our D-core and our goalies. Like, there's just, I see us having a very strong lineup from top to bottom right off the bat.
Couple of questions here, Will, in response to that. One, how much stock and belief do you put into the fact that the changes that were made, the flurry of moves by general manager Chris McFarland, and the lack of time to maybe coalesce and work together cohesively as a unit with all those new moving parts, how much did that factor into and play into their ultimate demise in the first round against the Dallas Stars? And conversely, how much should we not be worried about that now going forward with an off season under their belt, ready to get going in 2025?
Oh, I think it played a huge role, Richie. I mean, you look at particularly some of the high-powered offensive guys. Marty Necas had 1 goal in that entire series in 7 games. Brock Nelson, who got a healthy contract extension, did not do much to impress me against the Dallas Stars. But as you said, to flip it to the other side of the coin, you heard Gabe Landeskog just say there, we've got a deep lineup right now. And I think these guys know that, hey, this is the group. Last few years has been probably too much wheeling and dealing, maybe out of necessity. I get it. But at the same time, like, they are desperate to just say, these are the guys we're playing 82 with, and then these are the guys we're hopefully playing anywhere from 20 to 25 playoff games with to ultimately hoist the Stanley Cup. And it just felt like there was a sense of relief that, like, we get a full season with Nelson. We get a full season with Necas. We can really build this chemistry. We can figure out if Jack Drury is the third-line center or not. So another major takeaway from today is I think these Avs, ever since they won a title, have just felt this wave of uncertainty, whether it be off the ice issues or on the ice trades or whatever. And maybe more than ever, maybe the first time in literally 4 years, they feel settled. And I think settled is an important word of kind of the vibe around this team with the regular season just a couple of weeks away.
You have Brent Burns and Victor Olofsson in, Ryan Lindgren and Jonathan Drouin out, Brock Nelson with a healthy contract extension there, Marty Necas with a full offseason to settle into that winger role and be the hopeful production replacement for a guy like Mikko Rantanen. Will, with the earliest returns that you can give in this setting, is this Colorado Avalanche team legitimately equipped to make a Stanley Cup run in 2025? Or is this going to be something where, with the top-heavy nature of it, and we're knocking on all the wood and we're projecting a lot of green lights, but midway through the season, we might be having similar frustrations and conversations that we had last season at that time?
No, I think they're a cup contender, Richie, because obviously everyone knows You have Nathan MacKinnon, probably the best or second best player on earth. You got Cale Makar, the best defenseman on earth. But the goaltending situation, like, it is settled for the first time in a long time. You're going to roll the Wood brothers, Blackwood and Wedgwood, out there many a times. We're monitoring Mackenzie Blackwood, maybe dealing with a little something, but Jared said if it bleeds into the regular season, it'll just be a few games. So I don't think his injury, whatever it is going to be that big a deal. But based on the superstars, the goaltending, and some of the depth that these guys were talking about today, yeah, they can absolutely win the cup. And I'm not just saying that as an Avs fan or a homer or whatever. All the sports books have them in the top 5 odds. Like, we know there's puck luck. We know it's getting hot at the right time. It's getting healthy at the right time. But they got as good a chance as anyone to win the darn thing. And I go back to MacKinnon and Makar's comments of they know this isn't it. Like, no one's saying they're retiring after this year. This is their last chance. But they also know that with this core, as constructed, those chances are starting to tick off a little bit. And they may only have 2 or 3 more true goes at it with these guys we know and love. So why not? If you're going to do something later, just do it now. If you're going to get a second cup in your career, get that cup in 26, the summer of 26, and feel like now we have elevated ourselves to that all-time great type category, because we don't only have 1 championship ring, we have 2.
Last thing on the way out here, Will Peterson, and it's something I think I might get into in more expanded form tomorrow, but centered around Marty Necas, we did at least get some form of official acknowledgement or mentioning of the potential contract negotiation situation going on with him. As we know, he has 1 year left on the deal that the Avs inherited from Carolina during the Mikko Rantanen trade. What was the biggest takeaway from Marty Necas's availability today as it relates to his contract situation and the negotiations that seem to be ongoing?
Yeah, he did confirm those negotiations are ongoing, but he had a funny little answer at the end. He said, I don't even know what's going on. That's my agent. So good way to dodge the question from Marty Necas. But he did say, Richie, and I'll give him credit, he said he was shocked by the trade, but he felt so much more comfortable now. And I think that's only human, right? He was part of one of the biggest trades in the NHL in the last 20 years. And quite frankly, the player going out was better than him, the player coming in. I think that's an immense amount of pressure on a guy. And we heard the reports that he wasn't overly thrilled with his time in Colorado. I didn't get that sense today. I think he now feels like his 2 feet are on the ground in the Mile High City. He's happy here. He's bonded with his teammates. He wants to be an Avalanche for a long time. And he's hopeful that his agent and the organization can work out an extension. I am getting a little deja vu, though, because you do either have to extend the guy or trade the guy. You can't let him walk next summer for nothing. Feels very Mikko Rantanen-esque. While an extension never got done there, I'm not reporting this. I'm just guessing. Yep. My vibe from today is they probably will get an extension done with Marty Necas at some point between now and let's call it New Year's Eve.
I think that's a pretty fair assumption, and I think the deja vu factor that could be happening within the confines of Ball Arena on the business side of things may help contribute to that. Will, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the work that you do at DenverSports.com. In fact, I do this spiel at the end of every single one of my shows, so maybe I'll toss the mic to you. Tell our listeners why they should do anything other than go to DenverSports.com and check out all of the content that we have available right now with all of the volume and the tonnage that you and our other great writers and digital staff put out every single day.
Yeah, I mean, I just say this. We pay attention to every piece of news from every team in town. And if it's even borderline significant, you can read about it at DenverSports.com. So if you're a Denver sports fan, you will never miss anything if you go to our website.
And then you have the Watch Center with so much video content from the likes of, shows like this and The Rundown and Denver Sports Daily and your Mile High Hockey podcast, which is about to ramp up in full fashion. I have said it myself a number of times. You said it better than I did, so I appreciate the assist on that. Will, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch up again soon.
All right, sounds good. Take care, Richie.
Appreciate it. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and we will catch you tomorrow at noon for the next Rundown. I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the